All right, what's up, everyone? It's your boy Rome. So today what we're going to do is, based on a few inquiries that I've had via Instagram, we're going to do a quick breakdown of Luminar AI. And we're going to start with an image that I shot some years ago. I think this is a good candidate for a lot of the Luminar filters. And I'm going to show you guys how I captured this image. The basic lighting setup, this was, like I said, years ago. You know, it's amazing how fast we learn and how far we grow, you know, as photographers and our setups and things like that. But learning is a crucial component to photography or any type of creative endeavors. So we're going to look really quick how I lit this image. Then we're going to open it in Luminar, and we're going to look at some of the Luminar filters or plug-in filters that are available for us. So real quick here, we're going to jump over to Satellite, and I'm going to show you guys exactly how I set this scene up. So if we're looking at this really closely here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here on the model, past the camera. I had one light, which was a large softbox. I think at the time I was using, I believe it was an Alien B light. That's long before I got the Pro Photos. So that would have been about 400 watt seconds or something like that. And I used a simple reflector just to bounce a little bit of light back into the scene. As you saw in the image, there were some props that we had set up, which were basically similar to what I talked about in the previous video, like the IKEA little separators. And we had a yellow backdrop that was behind her, and we took a rug and we just kind of put the rug down on the floor just to give it some texture so she wouldn't be sitting just solely on the floor. So our light was coming from my perspective, left of the camera. And I know most guys set up their lights on the right, but for some reason that day I decided to do it from the left of me. And it was at 45 degrees. Let's zoom out here a little bit. About 45 degrees, the model, just slightly off center. And what I was doing there was feathering the light. As you see here, let's move this over. So I was feathering the light where it was coming across the model, hitting the reflector, and then kind of filling in the shadows a little bit. Let's take a look at really quick the f-stop of what I had. What was that? Let's look at our info real quick. See if it'll tell us. Yeah, this was shot at 1/25th of a second, f8. So I was at a focal length of about 86 millimeters, which that's not too bad. I was shooting, if I'm not mistaken, I think I was using the 70 to 200, but I can't be sure on that because this was taken a very long time ago. But anyway, guys, we're going to jump into Photoshop, and I'm just going to go ahead and lighten this image up really quick. Take a look at, and everything looks good. Histogram looks good here, so I may bring the exposure up just a touch. And then we're just going to go ahead and open it. All right, so here we are in Photoshop. And as you can see, this image, because of the lines, you can definitely tell that this image is slightly off, needs to be adjusted. So again, go into your crop, pick your straightening tool, find something in the scene that is straight, and it should straighten out your image. Now what I don't want to lose here is our fingers down here at the bottom. So I'm going to have to adjust this just enough to keep our fingers in the shot, and we should be good. Now there's a little bowing here at the top. I'll worry about that later, but you know, we're focusing on Luminar, so we're not really going to worry about that too much. But let's zoom in here really quick and look at her features. There are a few little imperfections in her skin. There's some, you know, flyaway hairs, things like that that I would normally, you know, take out in Photoshop, like maybe this little scar here. You know, usually I would use just, you know, a simple tool, and I would just take that out, you know, just to get rid of it. But for the most part, as you see here, you know, what you see is what you get. So we're just going to see what Luminar would do for you if you didn't know any other things about Photoshop. So we're just going to open this in Luminar. and wait for it to open. And once it opens, however long that may take. So now we're in Luminar. So if you're new to Luminar, one of the first things you're going to see is that Luminar is going to look at the image, and with its AI, it's going to try and figure out what type of image it is, and it's going to give you some suggestions. Like there is some experimental stuff that you can do here. There's, monochrome, which is going to be your black and whites, and then you have like, kind of what they call their influencer, filters and stuff like that. We're not going to focus on any of those today. Maybe I'll do that in another video. What we're going to look at is what comes with the basic stuff, where your basic editing, where you're literally editing everything yourself. So the first tool that you see when you first come in here is going to be Enhance. Now, this is not for everyone, because usually this will work for more scenic scenes. So let's just look at Enhance really quick to see what it'll do. So if you bring the Enhance up, it starts to add a lot of contrast to your image. And if this was a sky, it would be basically doing the same thing. A lot of dynamic contrast would apply to the image. I'm not really a big fan of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump down here really quick to the parts that would concern most photographers doing portraits. And that's going to be the face. So as we look at her face here, it's not very dark, but it could have been, better lit. So we could add a little bit of face lighting, just to light the face up a little bit. Her face is very proportional, but if you needed to, for some reason, you wanted to slim the face, you have that feature here. You can go in pretty far, or you can just slim it just a touch like you would normally do if you were using Liquify or something like that. So the next thing we're going to look at is going to be like her eyes as an example. So we're going to zoom in here, and you can see the catch light in her eyes from where the light was, but you can enhance the flare in her eyes. You can enhance, you could enlarge her eyes, as I showed you before, where we could make them really cartoonish, but we don't want to do that. You can also adjust the whites in her eyes. So if we want to bring those up just a touch, that's good. Then it has an eye enhancer, and I think what that does is just add a little bit more contrast, to the eyes. If for some reason the person had red eye, you have a slider here that will take the red eye out. If she had dark circles under her eyes, this basically would go in and target those. She doesn't have any of those things. Now, she has really nice eyebrows, and she spent a lot of time doing the makeup on that. So if you want to enhance those just a touch, you can bring those up. Okay, so then the next thing would be mouth. You can't really see her teeth. So there is a teeth whitening slider here, but we're not going to focus on that. We're going to focus more on the lipstick itself, right? So if you're looking at the lipstick, the first thing you see is lip saturation. So if you start to move that a little bit to the side, it just kind of warms it up. I'm not a big fan of that, but it's there. You can increase the redness of the lips, and I think that's applied more to natural lips. You can darken the lips, if that's what you're into. So all of those things are there for you, and this is all built into the program itself. Let me show you something that's kind of cool when it comes to adjusting the eyes. So as you can all see here, she has, lovely brown eyes, but you can go in and you can change her eye color. So now they're blue or green, or let's say you maybe want to give her hazel eyes or something like that. And then this slider here determines how much of that actually comes in. If you can see there, just kind of goes in and out. And then they have these cool things like you can do cat eyes. You can do owl eyes, if you want to do something like that. But I would just stick with her original eyes. That's what God gave her, so that's what we're going to stick with. So the next thing that we're going to go down and take a look at is going to be skin. So she has really nice skin. Obviously I haven't done any airbrushing or anything like that on her skin, but if you needed to, you can come in here and you can start to soften the skin by just moving the slider. And you'll see it really starts to blur out some of the imperfections. It doesn't do as good a job as say like portraiture or something like that, but it is pretty close. If you're just trying to get your images out to a client or project you're working on, and if for some reason you get some shine from oiliness in the skin or reflection from light, It does have a shine removal slider. And this little tab here, if you click on it, what it's supposed to do is go in and remove imperfections. So we're going to zoom in here real quick. We're going to turn it off and turn it on. I don't know. In this specific image, I don't really see that much of a difference that it's making. But, you know, I've seen many people's videos where they talk about this software, and maybe just because of the type of image they're using or whatever the algorithm is, you know, detecting, it'll correct that. Now, the other thing that you can do is you can adjust body types within this plugin. So, for instance, like her shape. Now, this is set at 0. But let's say if we wanted to really draw her in, and you see how that's, you know, obviously affecting the background, but, you know, that's also to the extreme. But if you were just trying to adjust a person just a touch, you know, you could do that here, you know. And then they have one for the abdomen, which just kind of puckers that in. You know, if I was going to do either of these things, I would probably do it in Photoshop. But if you don't have a lot of Photoshop background, this can be very, very powerful for you. Now, what I want to show you guys that's a little bit different, if you look at this image and you look at what is available to you here, this is what is available to you if you're using this as a plugin in Photoshop. But let's say, for instance, you don't have Photoshop. So you don't own Photoshop, but you want to edit this image. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save this image as I brought it in, and I'm just going to do a save as, so I can save it as a JPEG. And let me give it something so I can find it easily. So we're just going to save that image as a JPEG. And then I'm going to bring Photoshop down. So now all we need to do is find that image, which is here. And we're going to open it with Luminar. Okay? So we're going to open it. Where's my Luminar AI? There it is. Now we're opening it in Luminar as a standalone. And there's a few other things that Luminar gives you the ability to do that you don't have that same abilities, like for instance, composition is one. So if you click here, and Luminar is going to try and determine what would be the best crop for this image. Well, I think that's pretty far off because again, we're losing her feet or hand, but you can still adjust this. You know, you can still adjust it as you need to and then save it. That's the only one thing that I see that is missing, that is different. And then let's be sure, you know what? Let's look at that just to be sure. So we're going to close Luminar and we're going to go back to Photoshop. I just want to make sure, so I'm not telling you guys something that's not true. I don't use Luminar that often, but I have it. And I'm just looking for things that can work for, you know, other photographers starting out that maybe don't have a really strong background in Photoshop. So as you see here, the composition one is not available inside of the plugin, but it is available in the standalone. So if you purchase the software, it will allow you to install it as a standalone, and you'll be able to do a lot of the things that we described, right? So the other thing that I mentioned really quick is that if you were going to do any type of body modifications in that Luminar plugin, you won't have the kind of control that you would have in Photoshop. So really quick here, if you went into liquify in Photoshop as an example, once you set your brush size, your pressure, things like that, I bring it down to about 14. And I can then go in and I can adjust the body ever so gently, almost to the point that a person wouldn't even realize that something has been done, unless you know, obviously go to the extremes, right? And the other thing that Liquify will give you the ability to do is to adjust the face somewhat. So if you went in here and you chose the face, you could slim the face, you could adjust the eyes, you could make them larger or smaller, or you could make them wider, you know, whatever you want to do. You can adjust the nose, and it knows where every different part of the face is when you're working with this. So it makes it a lot easier to target something specific. You know, for instance, if you wanted to just bring that down just a touch, you know, you could do all of those things. So that's built into Photoshop. I do believe Photoshop, you know, for a working photographer is a worthwhile investment. But when a lot of guys are starting out, you know, that $20 a month for that subscription seems like a lot. And, you know, for some, it may be just that, a lot. I mean, you know, it's a lot of things people are dealing with, you know, post 2020. But if you can afford it, I would say go ahead and get Photoshop, get Lightroom if that's what you use. I usually capture all of my images in Capture One. I do have Lightroom, but I almost never use it. I do use Photoshop, you know, on, you know, almost every image that I edit, but I have other options if I chose to use them. So, you know, as I said, you know, I just wanted to do a video where you guys can kind of get an idea of what is out there for you if you're starting out and, you know, just seems so overwhelming with all the different YouTube videos that you're seeing to say, oh, you have to have this software and you have to have Photoshop and you have to have Lightroom and you have to have these things. It's not true. You can get a lot of your work done with very, very basic software and, you know, still achieve, you know, a very polished look. So anyway, guys, I'm going to bring this video to an end. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do so, guys. So that way I can, you know, build up the numbers and, you know, get this information out to more people and more people will see my content. You know how we do it. If you follow me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, wherever it may be, and you have a question, leave it down in the comments. You know, on Instagram, you can just send me a direct message. And if I'm not busy, I will most likely respond to it. So until next time, guys, stay safe. I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace. I'm out.